Good evening. Welcome to our primary election special on KPBS television and radio. I'm Ebone Monet. We'll bring you tonight's results as they come in. We have live team coverage. Allison St. John joins us from the Republican Watch Party at the U.S. Grant. Jade Hindman covers the Democratic Watch Party at the Westin. Taryn Minto is standing by in the newsroom, and Eric Anderson is inside Election Central at Golden Hall. Amita Sharma is also there with columnist and podcaster Ruben Navarrete and Art Castañedas, publisher of La Prensa San Diego. They'll bring us analysis of the races tonight. Turning to our top race tonight, the race for governor. The top two candidates move on to the general election in November. We'll turn to the results now, and it's Lieutenant Governor Gavin Newsom is in the lead with 34% of the vote, followed by Republican John Cox from Rancho Santa Fe with 27% of the vote. Trailing behind is Antonio Villaraigosa, Democrat, former mayor of Los Angeles, with 11% of the vote. Now on to the congressional contest. We have an open race for the 49th district. This after Republican Congressman Darrell Issa decided not to run for a 9th term. Republican Diane Harkey with 24% of the vote, nearly 25% of the vote, with the votes counted so far. Democrat Mike Levin, environmental attorney, is behind her with nearly 17% of the votes counted so far. We are also following returns in the race for the 50th district. Congressman Duncan Hunter Jr. is the incumbent. Duncan Hunter Jr. is in the lead with 47% of the vote, and Amar Campa-Najjar is behind him with 15.5% of the votes counted so far. Moving on to our local races in the district attorney contest. Current interim district attorney Summer Stephan is running against Deputy Public Defender Genevieve Jones-Wright, and Summer Stephan is in the lead with nearly 65% of the votes so far. Genevieve Jones-Wright is behind her with 35% of the votes. We are also following the race for San Diego County Sheriff. Two-term incumbent Sheriff Bill Gore faces Commander Dave Myers. Bill Gore is in the lead with 57% of the vote. And we'll turn now to the County Board of Supervisors, the race for the District 4 seat. This is the race to replace Supervisor Ron Roberts, who is terming out after 2 decades. The current board is all Republican and hasn't changed since 1995. Right now, former San Diego County District Attorney Bonnie DeManis is in the lead with 29% of the votes, and Democrat Nathan Fletcher is behind her, very close, with 28% of the votes. Now to the race for the District 5 seat on the Board of Supervisors. This is to replace Supervisor Bill Horn, who is also facing term limits after a law change. We have Jim Desmond at 45% of the vote, followed by Michelle Gomez with 21, nearly 22% of the votes so far. We'll turn now to the San Diego City Council contest. In the race for District 2, Lori Zapp is the incumbent. District 2 includes San Diego Beach and Bay communities from Claremont to Point Loma. And Lori Zapp, the incumbent, is in the lead with 47% of the vote. In the race for the District 4 seat on the City Council, Myrtle Cole is the incumbent. Now, District 4 includes Oak Park to Paradise Hills, and Myrtle Cole is in the lead with 41% of the vote, and Monica Montgomery is falling not too far behind with 35, nearly 36% of the vote. Moving on to the race for City Council District 6 seat, Chris Cate is the incumbent. The District 6 includes the communities of Rancho Penasquitos to Kearney Mesa, and Chris Cate has a strong lead with 61% of the votes counted so far. And in the race for District 8 seat on the City Council, candidates are running to replace David Alvarez, who is terming out this year. Vivian Moreno is in the lead with 38, nearly 39% of the vote, and Antonio Martinez has 28% of the votes so far. And in the U.S. Senate race, longtime U.S. Senator Dianne Feinstein has enough votes to secure a position in the November general election. You can monitor more primary results at kpbs.org from the race for governor to local San Diego contest. Let's check in now with KPBS reporter Amitha Sharma at Golden Hall for more. Amitha?
Thank you, Ebony. I am here with my two political analysts, Ari Castaneras, who is publisher of La Prensa San Diego, and columnist Ruben Navarrete. Let's dive right into these results. The big question in the California governor's race is who is going to be the second top vote getter? It was always assumed that Gavin Newsom, the lieutenant governor, a Democrat, was going to be the front runner. Right now, with 16% of the vote, we've got Newsom at the top with 34%. We have John Cox coming in at 27%, and we have Antonio Villaraigosa, former Los Angeles mayor, a Democrat, coming in third place. How volatile of a race is this at this point, Art?
This is what you would expect to see. Republicans do better in the early absentee count, and that's what's been counted so far. These are votes that were sent in up to 3 weeks ago, and they're tallied and then they're announced starting at 8 o'clock. So it's not unexpected to see the Republican doing much better. I think the race will open up. I think that the gap is so far, though, right now between second and third that it doesn't look like either Antonio Villaraigosa or Travis Allen can catch up. I think this is a runaway race between the two. The two that are in first and second now will probably end up that way tonight.
Ruben, there were a lot of stories in recent weeks done on Lieutenant Governor Gavin Newsom's attempts to skew the vote, to boost John Cox's chances in this race, because he perceived Cox as the weaker candidate to face off with in the November general election. Is there a risk to that strategy, A? And B, it looks like it worked.
There is a risk, absolutely. It backfired. You could say it backfired on the Democratic Party because Cox is doing so well that you still have Gavin Newsom out in front. But the surprises tonight is that the gap between Gavin Newsom and John Cox is so small. We expected Gavin Newsom to be way out ahead of John Cox. Cox would be in the 20s. Gavin Newsom would be in the high 30s. They're neck and neck. This is not to say that Cox is going to beat Newsom tonight, but I think that Gavin Newsom did such a good job of inflating Cox that he took a lot of the air out of the sails of Democrats. He deflated the Democrats. There was a sense of gaming the system. There was a great story in Politico today saying, how did the Democrats break this primary? They broke it by trying to game the system with these cute games, and it really left a lot of Democratic voters really dejected.
And Art, what does this vote say about Republican turnout overall?
Well, I think it's pretty strong tonight. I think the fact that Donald Trump endorsed John Cox really helped him in this race, and the turnout has been good for both Travis Allen and for John Cox. I think they're going to see higher than expected numbers at the end of the night. But I think this will start to open up between Gavin Newsom and John Cox, and they'll be way ahead of the other leaders. And you see what happened in the Democratic Party. There were 4 strong Democrats in this race, and John Chang and Delane Easton really ended up being spoilers that probably hurt Antonio Villaraigosa more than they hurt Gavin Newsom.
Let's turn our attention now to the 49th Congressional District. This was one of the most watched districts in the nation. The fear was that the Democrats were going to be locked out of this race because there were some strong Republicans running. Diane Harkey, she's leading the pack, as well as Rocky Chavez. But it looks like Mike Levin at this point is coming in second place. But the Democratic vote still looks splintered, does it not?
Well, actually, in the 49th, you've got splintering going off in both parties. You have so many people running in the 49th. A complete listing would be about 15 candidates, 11, the numbers we're looking at. It was very hard in the 49th, and I live in the 49th, to differentiate one candidate from another.
Okay, we're going to talk about that more. We're going to pause it right there. Ebony, back to you.
Thank you, Amitha. Allison St. John is standing by at the Republican headquarters. Allison.
Yes, Ebony, I'm at the U.S. Grant where the Republicans have been celebrating all night. This has been one of the most successful election nights they've had here, of course, because they have the Republican candidate for governor, John Cox, has been here. And the fact that he's done so well in the polls tonight, at least in these early returns, I think has given a lot of people here a lot of excitement. I have with me the chair of the San Diego Republican Party, Tony Krivaric. Thanks for joining us, Tony.
Yeah, you bet.
So now, with John Cox, what is it, do you think, that has led to his success tonight? Is he a bit doing better than you were expecting?
Well, it shouldn't be a surprise. In the past, it wasn't a surprise that we had a Republican in the runoff, but with this jungle primary, we could have had 2 Democrats, and Republicans coalesced behind John Cox. It's great that he's a San Diegan. We've known him for many, many years here. The rest of the state's going to now get to know him, and of course, the nation, the eyes of the nation will be on California's governor's race. So a lot of excitement in the room, and what's going to happen is there will be a bright contrast painted between John Cox's vision of California and Gavin Newsom's vision of California, and Californians are going to get to decide.
It's interesting, he said tonight that Gavin Newsom had wanted to have him as an opponent rather than another Democrat, but perhaps he should think again. I wanted to talk about the 49th Congressional District also, which we've had some results which suggest that Republican Diane Harkey is in the lead, which was expected from recent polls. However, 3 Democrats, Mike Levin, Sarah Jacobs, and Doug Applegate, are all sort of neck and neck in second place, which means it looks like at this point there will be a Republican and a Democrat running on this race for the 49th Congressional District to replace Darrell Issa in November. Now, Tony, the thing is that the Republican Party did actually endorse Diane Harkey. The Democrats did not. How important do you think it is that a party endorse a candidate? The Democrats, we have 3 of them running neck and neck. The Republicans, we have 1 way ahead.
Yeah. It's absolutely critical. I don't know that it would have mattered that much for the Democrats because you had so many candidates and so many well-funded candidates. So they've had beat up on each other over the last several months or so. And so what's going to happen is whoever makes the top 2 there will be quite damaged from all this, and they have a lot of acrimony and animosity in their party to coalesce behind their candidates. So just like Gavin Newsom, be careful what you wish for. You got John Cox. They were Democrats in the 49th wanted to get rid of Congressman Issa, and what they have now is they have a very strong Republican woman at the top, who was a top vote getter, and the Democrats have split their vote. Their allegiances are split, and they're going to try to coalesce. But there's been millions and millions and millions of dollars spent between Democrats beating each other up. So Diane Harkey has a really, really good shot to hold this seat. I'm confident it'll be a Republican going into November.
Tony, thank you so much. So it is true what Tony Kravaric said, that there has been millions of dollars spent, and in fact the people who spent the most, Paul Kerr spent almost $4 million of his own money, Democrat, and he's not even anywhere close to the top 2. So money has not been the issue. I think the voters are looking for something else in this race to replace Darrell Issa. Back to you, Ebony.
Thank you, Allison. Let's turn now and check in with KPBS reporter Jade Hyman at the Democratic headquarters. Jade.
Hey there, Ebony. Well, yes, we're here at the West End in the gas lamp area. Lots of people here watching these returns come in here where the Democrats have set up shop. We have a lot of people among the crowd. We've got voters, we've got supporters, and a few candidates mixed in there, too. One of the big races that people are following tonight, the 50th Congressional District. Quick check of the numbers. Right now, they're saying that Duncan Hunter's got about 48%, Amar Campanajjar with 15%, and then nestled in close behind them, Butner and Wells both with 13%. Now, I spoke with Jessica Hayes. She's the chair of the San Diego County Democratic Party, and she's saying that she's hoping high voter turnout actually tips things in their favor. Here's what she had to say.
We're expecting to be pleasantly surprised, I think, tonight. I think we've had a great deal of interest in voting. Traditionally, in early ballot voting, vote-by-mail voting, Republicans have always voted greater than Democrats. But this year, Democrats are not only even with Republicans, they're actually edging them a little bit in early ballot returns. And of all the people turning in early ballots, non-party, Republican, Democrat, 1/3 of them are brand new voters. And so there's a great deal of interest. We have 600 volunteers who went out knocking, talking, calling. We made 20,000 contacts, conversations face-to-face, dropped 100,000 pieces of literature, 40,000 phone calls. So we've been out doing our work.
And also in the crowd here live, David Alvarez and a number of supporters, as you can see behind me there. Of course, we'll be here throughout the night to give you a check of the numbers as they come in. Live, Jade Hyman, KPBS News.
Thanks, Jade. Just moments ago, Republican candidate for governor John Cox spoke to his supporters at the U.S. Grant.
Hello, California. Are we ready for a Republican governor? Yes. We put a businessman in the White House. Let's put a businessman in the governor's mansion, huh? Yes. Very much. And you know what? The biggest thank you I'm going to reserve for the voters of California. Thank you, thank you. And, you know, the voters stood up to the special interests of this state who are trying to take this state down with them. We are not going to let them, are we? You know, the last 6 weeks, the special interest money, the corruptive nature of that was on full display for all Californians. Millions of dollars from special interest billionaires, they were spent on pretty nasty, misleading commercials. And they attacked our campaign, and I'm happy to tell you they failed, didn't they? Yes. And we saw this repeated across the state in legislative races and congressional races. They wanted to limit the choice to one party. Well, I'm telling you, one party in Sacramento, one-party rule in Sacramento is bad enough, but one-party elections is just plain un-American.
If you are just joining us on KPBS radio or TV, this is live coverage of the 2018 primary election. Now let's hear about the issues and concerns from the District 5 voters of San Diego County.
Enjoy Valley Center the way it is, and it's very clean. Yes, it's in the mountain, the road, everything is clean, and the neighborhood are very friendly. It's very safe to live.
All the trends I see are positive, other than the homeless people. And that's, I've been here a few years, and each year it seems to increase in numbers.
I think they do a great job with our homeless. I do think that they do a lot with them from what I've heard, but I've also heard that a large percentage of their job is taking care of the homeless, which they should be doing different things with their time.
I go both ways on traffic because I've been a long-term supporter of emissions controls, electric vehicle owner for many, many years. But we've got freeway right behind us here, and it's important that we do have access down through the corridor here. It's a real challenge.
Well, I wish there was a dog beach.
Yes. So that Sir Willie Nelson could get out and go to the beach too.
Strut his stuff.
Let's take another look at the congressional race for the 49th District. This contest made national headlines when Congressman Darrell Issa announced his retirement. We'll turn to the results so far. Republican Diane Harkey is in the lead with 25% of the vote. She received the endorsement from both the San Diego and Orange County Republican parties, followed by Mike Levin with 17% of the vote. The Democrat from Orange County is an environmental attorney, and Sarah Jacobs, at 29 years old, she is the youngest in this race, and she has 15% of the vote. She is being endorsed by Susan Davis and Congressman Juan Vargas. And in the race for the 50th District, the top two candidates move on to compete in the November election. Let's look at the results so far. Incumbent Duncan Hunter Jr. is in the lead with 47% of the vote. Amar Campanajar with 15, nearly 16% of the vote. Following not too far behind is Josh Butner with 14% of the vote. Turning to the race for the 51st District, Democratic Congressman Juan Vargas is the incumbent, and he is in the lead with 63% of the vote. And in the race for the 52nd District, Congressman Scott Peters is the incumbent, and the Democratic congressman is in the lead with 57% of the vote. And in the race for the 53rd District, Congresswoman Susan Davis is the incumbent, and she is in the lead with 61% of the vote. Let's check in with KPBS reporter Eric Anderson at Election Central at Golden Hall. Hi, Eric.
And that's precisely where we're at. We're at Election Central in Golden Hall, and if you look through this room, you see why this is such an attractive place to be on election night. You've got lots of people who have come out here to see just how their candidates are doing, to see who they're talking to when it comes to the media. The big boards in the back are showing us the results. They continuously roll, they continuously update, and they're letting us know that we are there and at the heart of democracy here in San Diego. Now, just a few minutes ago, we had a chance to talk to one of the candidates in the DA's race, the leading candidate, Summer Stephan. I had a chance to ask her a couple of questions, and here's what she had to say.
I feel very encouraged and just humbled and honored by all these people trusting me with their vote. Our vote is one of the most important way we express our democracy, and it tells me that our community trusts and really likes the work that we've done protecting kids and seniors and keeping our community safe. I hope it keeps going in this direction.
What do you think was it in the race that resonated with the voters?
I think that the voters saw in me someone who is not a politician, but a public servant who served this community for 3 decades. I think they appreciated the dedication and the experience and the fact that I've always honored and valued victims and survivors and their voice and made sure that everyone's rights are protected.
There was a lot of outside. Summer Stephan, of course, talking to us here at KPBS's headquarters in Golden Hall, letting us know what she felt about the numbers that were coming in her race. She's leading over her challenger in the race to be district attorney here in San Diego County. There are lots of other races that we're going to keep you up to date on. We'll be back to Golden Hall in a few minutes or so to let you know more about what's going on here. I'm Eric Anderson, live in Golden Hall. Now back to you, Ebony.
Thank you, Eric. Former District Attorney Bonnie DeManis is running for the District 4 seat on the County Board of Supervisors. She addressed the crowd at the Republican headquarters just moments ago at the U.S. Grant.
People have gone out of their way to help. I really appreciate it. We're going to get the bureaucracy busted when I get in, and we are going to take care of all the issues that are so important to us. Because as the district attorney, I've dealt with those issues. And I am so happy about Summer Stephan. She is fabulous, and I'm happy for the office that she is going to kill him tonight. So without further ado, I'm not going to take up all your time. I just want to say thank you from the bottom of my heart. I hope that those shoes that Ron is wearing, I'll be able to fill. And by the way, my spouse over here, Denise Nellison, you want to give a little wave? You got to know that she loves me if she's letting me take this job without a salary. I'm donating the salary, and that obviously has an impact. But thank you all very much, and I wish everybody the best tonight. Thanks, Bill.
More election results now. In the race for San Diego County Sheriff Bill Gore is the incumbent, and he's in the lead with 57% of the votes. He is running against Dave Myers, who's a commander with the San Diego Sheriff's Department, and he's been with the Sheriff's Department for 33 years, and he has 43% of the vote. Now to the race for the San Diego District Attorney. It's an open contest after Bonnie DeManis stepped down last year. Summer Stephan, who's the interim district attorney, has 65% of the vote. Genevieve Jones-Wright has 35% of the votes counted so far. This is live KPBS news coverage of the 2018 primary election. You can follow more returns at kpbs.org. We talked to voters at the polls today. We wanted to know why it was important to vote.
Well, it's our duty. We have freedom, and we should, take advantage of it and have a say in what happens, and I feel if you don't vote, you have no right to complain, because it's we have this and a lot of places don't have this, and I want to see certain things happen the way I want it to be.
That's our responsibility, as U.S. citizens, we're given the opportunity to speak up and, we have a choice, so we should stand up for it.
Now, more election returns. We're going to turn to the statewide propositions. Proposition 68 is a $4 billion bond proposal to fund new parks, conservation efforts, and flood protection. If passed, this would add an estimated $200 million to the state debt for the next 40 years. So far, with the yes votes, it's 55% of the votes. No votes make up nearly 45% of the votes. Proposition 69 is the transportation prop. If passed, it would mandate that all money generated from the recently passed gas tax increase go to transportation projects. So far, the yes votes are at 82%. The no votes at 18%. We'll turn now to Proposition 70. This would require a legislative supermajority vote to spend cap-and-trade funds. So far, you're seeing 61% of voters voting no on this proposition, with 40% of voters, nearly actually 39%, voting yes. Proposition 71 would amend the state constitution to wait for the Secretary of State to certify a ballot measure has passed before it officially becomes law. This instead of taking effect the day after the election. Let's see how people are voting so far. The yes votes are at 78%, the no at 22%. And Proposition 72. This would allow for homeowners to install rainwater capture systems to help with drought conditions without facing new property improvement taxes. 84% of voters so far have voted yes, with 16% voting no. Another look at the race for governor. Lieutenant Governor Gavin Newsom, Democrat from San Francisco, has 34% of the votes, with Republican from Rancho Santa Fe, John Cox, businessman from Rancho Santa Fe, John Cox, with 26% of the votes so far. And in the district attorney race, we'll turn to those results at this time. You can monitor more results in our primary election at kpbs.org. Now turning to that district attorney's race, Summer Stephan has 65% of the votes, and Genevieve Jones-Wright has 35% of the votes so far. We'll turn now to Jade Hyman at the West End for more. Jade?
Thanks, Ebony. Yeah, back out here live at the West End, where the Democratic Party for San Diego is here, and we're watching the returns come in. With me is Dr. Shirley Weber. Which races are you watching closely tonight?
Well, I always watch my own, of course, the Assembly, the 79th Assembly District, even though, you know, we're doing really well. But I always watch that because you never know what's going to happen. But I'm also watching what's happening up in Orange County with Josh Newman's recall, looking to see what's happening with ISA's seat, who's going to be the ones running in that, and who's going to be involved in running in the 71st and some other districts in San Diego. So we're kind of watching everything to see what's going on.
And the voter turnout's been pretty high for this election. What are your hopes for the numbers as they roll in tonight?
Well, you know, I'm hoping that we'll basically make record numbers in terms of turnout. We've done some great things in Sacramento to change how people vote. So we have voting centers. We got absentee ballots to everyone this time. So a lot of things are changing in terms of elections. People may not have noticed it, but they had greater options, and so the turnout has been much better. And we're going to hopefully increase that turnout and make sure that almost every registered voter actually votes.
And tell me about the Assembly bill that you pushed in terms of policing.
Well, we have a new bill now, AB 931, which is basically deals with transparency in terms of policing as well as community safety. And we're looking at what basically changing the philosophy of policing that says that you should not use lethal force unless you're in imminent danger. If the person's in danger of hurting, not necessarily hurting themselves, but hurting an officer or someone in the public, that we should look at other strategies of de-escalation before we actually go to lethal force. And it's a bill that really, hopefully, will save lives not only of people in the community, but when it's been implemented in other cities, it's actually saved lives on the police force.
All right, Dr. Weber, as the numbers come in, is there anything else you'd like to add or say?
Well, I hope this is a great night. About 18 months ago, it was a horrible night. We know that, back in November of 2016. So everybody's smiling tonight. When I came to this room back in November of 2016, it was like a funeral. So at least now people are smiling and happy, and there's great hope. And I think the election is going to prove to us that we can actually basically make this blue wave really cover all of California. That's our goal.
All right, Dr. Weber, thank you so much for your time. I appreciate it.
Well, thank you.
All right, and as you see here tonight, there is still a lot of excitement in the room as the numbers come in. A lot of people here are hopeful, and so we'll continue to have those updated for you as the newscast continues. Live tonight, Jade Hindman, KPBS News.
Thanks, Jade. Let's check in with KPBS reporter Amitha Sharma at Golden Hall for more. Amitha.
Thank you, Ebony. The 50th Congressional District, it's one of the most conservative districts in the country. Republican Congressman Duncan Hunter, who's the target of a federal investigation for alleged campaign misspending, he says it was an honest mistake, is easily breezing through this primary right now with 47% of the vote. That's with 13% of the precincts reporting. His closest competitor is a Democrat, Amar Kampa-Najjar, at 15%. Are we to take from these numbers that an FBI investigation is no longer a dark cloud over a candidate's head?
Unfortunately, that is true in the era of Donald Trump, and especially in this district, where if you look at the numbers, Donald Trump polls at about the same number that Duncan Hunter is now polling. People don't seem to care. 20 years ago, this was a career ender that the FBI would be investigating, and when they say it was a mistake, the charges on his campaign credit card were for video games for his son, for dental work, for student tuition at their school, for trips that had nothing to do with campaign. These were not honest mistakes. This was misspending of campaign money, and it doesn't seem to matter anymore. It's unfortunate.
The biggest factor in the 50th congressional race was Duncan Hunter. Duncan Hunter Sr. The father did a great job, the former congressman, of putting a vice grip on this race, scaring off Darrell Issa, who was rumored to be moving over from 49 to run in 50. Scaring off Carl DeMaio and others who might have run in the 50. The minute they got all the other Republicans out of it, they were able to cruise, as you say, right through it because it's a congressional district. The only trouble that Junior would ever have had was from a strong Republican challenger. So Father's Day coming up, you know, Senior deserves a big present from Junior. Senior kept Junior in Congress. We'll see if he can keep him out of jail.
Ruben Navarrete, you're a long-standing columnist in this community, nationally known. Given that this is a solidly red district, can a Democrat overtake Hunter?
No way. No way. This is going to be the exception to the so-called blue wave. This is probably where the blue wave stops in that particular district. They're going to rally around Hunter. You might not get a huge amount of support for him. But again, this race was won when you kept out another Republican alternative. Nobody's going to vote Democrat in that district.
All right,
the registration numbers are almost 60-40. When you look at the numbers that both the Democrats in this race added together are only at about 40%.
It's not like the 49th at all. It's much redder.
It's not a swing district at all. It's a red district. And unless Duncan Hunter gets indicted and convicted between now and the November election, he's going to cruise to victory.
We're going to talk about that a little bit more later on in this show. I want to turn our attention to the district attorney's race. There were two very different candidates. You had interim DA Summer Stephan, a career prosecutor, and you had Genevieve Jones-Wright, a public defender for much of her career. George Soros, the billionaire, jumped into this campaign by pouring hundreds of thousands of dollars, in fact, into helping promote Jones-Wright. Why didn't that work?
Well, he did pour in over $1 million, and they pulled it in the last week. They canceled their ad buys when they realized the race was a runaway. It was over 20 points spread in the polls. It didn't work because of all the elected officials in the county, in the state, very few require real experience. Anybody can be elected to Congress. Anybody can be elected to the legislature. There's no real skill set you need. But to be a district attorney, you need to run basically a huge law firm. And she just didn't have the experience that Summer Stephan has. And I think this was a runaway because of the credentials.
Ruben, let's switch gears very quickly to the District 4 Supervisor's race. It looks like Nathan Fletcher, Democrat, former Assemblyman, and former District Attorney Bonnie Dumanis are at neck and neck in this race.
Right.
This is a repeat of the mayor's race back in 2012, the San Diego mayor's race. What's a fight like them going into the general?
Right. This is going to be a great race. I mean, you think about Nathan Fletcher versus Bonnie Dumanis in the general. This is a San Diego race through and through. They both have their power bases. It's going to be a very strong candidate, Republican and Democrat, going at one another. Fletcher, down the former Republican, turned Democrat. Lori Saldana, also in third place, did very well, got over 20% of the vote.
She had a lot of help.
A lot of help. She did did well. And so you had a very strong Democrat showing across the board in that particular race. And I think a lot of folks really are thankful to Bonnie Dumanis for her years of service in the district attorney's office, but they'd like to see her just enjoy her retirement and go into something else because Nathan Fletcher is doing a lot better in this race than people thought he would.
And we're going to take a break there. Ruben Navarrete, columnist, La Prensa San Diego publisher, Art Castaneras, thank you so much. We're coming back to you a little bit later in the show with more analysis. Ebony, turning it over to you.
Thank you, Amitha. This is our live primary election special on KPBS News. Let's take another look at our top contest tonight in the race for governor, a wide field of candidates competing to replace current governor Jerry Brown. Let's take a look at the results so far. Lieutenant Governor Gavin Newsom, Democrat from San Francisco, at 34% of the vote. Republican from Rancho Santa Fe, businessman John Cox at 26% of the vote. And Democrat Antonio Villaraigosa at 11% of the vote. He's neck and neck with Republican State Assemblyman Travis Allen at 11% of the votes so far. Turning to the congressional contest, we have an open race for the 49th Congressional District. The district currently represented by Congressman Darrell Issa covers southern Orange County and western San Diego County. We have Republican Diane Harkey at 25% of the votes so far. Democrat Mike Levin from Orange County, an environmental attorney, at 17% of the vote, and Sarah Jacobs at 15% of the vote, followed by former Marine Colonel Doug Applegate at 13% of the vote. We are also following returns in the race for the 50th Congressional District. Congressman Duncan Hunter is the incumbent, and he has a significant lead at 48% of the votes so far. Moving on to our local races in the district attorney contest, we have interim district attorney Summer Stephan with 65% of the votes so far, and Deputy Public Defender Genevieve Jones-Wright with 35% of the votes. We are also following the race for San Diego County Sheriff. Two-term incumbent Sheriff Bill Gore faces Commander Dave Myers, and Sheriff Bill Gore has 57% of the vote, and Commander Dave Myers has 43% of the votes so far. Turning to the County Board of Supervisors in the race for the District 4 seat. The district stretches from southeastern San Diego to La Jolla. This is the race to replace Supervisor Ron Roberts, who is terming out after 2 decades. We have Bonnie DeManis at 29% and Nathan Fletcher not far behind at 28, nearly 29%. So it's a very close race at this time. Now to the race for the District 5 seat, also on the County Board of Supervisors. This is to replace Supervisor Bill Horn, who is also facing term limits after a law change. Horn has backed candidate Jim Desmond, and Jim Desmond is in the lead with 45% of the vote, followed by Michelle Gomez with 22% of the vote. Now on to the San Diego City Council contest. In the race for District 2, Lori Zapp is the incumbent, and Lori Zapp is in the lead with 47% of the vote, followed by Jennifer Campbell with 22% of the vote. In the race for the District 4 seat on the City Council, Myrtle Cole is the incumbent. Now, District 4 includes Oak Park to Paradise Hills and much of San Diego's southeastern neighborhoods. Myrtle Cole, the incumbent, is in the lead with 41% of the vote, and Monica Montgomery is not too far behind with nearly 36% of the votes so far. Moving on to the race for City Council District 6 seat, Chris Cate is the incumbent. District 6 includes the communities of Rancho Penasquitos to Kearny Mesa, and incumbent Chris Cate is in the lead, a significant lead, with 61% of the vote. Tommy Howe with nearly 15% of the vote. And in the race for the District 8 seat on the City Council, candidates are running to replace David Alvarez, who is terming out. District 8 includes Barrio Logan, Logan Heights, down to Otay Mesa. Vivian Moreno has 39% of the vote. Antonio Martinez has 28% of the vote. Our KPBS Live team coverage continues. Allison St. John joins us from the Republican Watch Party at the U.S. Grant. Jade Heidman covers the Democratic Watch Party at the Westin. Taryn Minto is standing by in the newsroom, and Eric Anderson is inside Election Central at Golden Hall. Amitha Sharma is also there with columnist and podcaster Ruben Navarrete and Art Castañedas, publisher of La Prensa San Diego. They'll bring us analysis of the races tonight. Our election coverage continues online. You can check out more primary results at kpbs.org. Allison St. John is standing by at the Republican headquarters. Hi, Allison.
Yeah. Hi, Ebony. Yes, there's been a great deal of excitement here at the U.S. Grant tonight, mainly because of the apparent success of John Cox, the Republican gubernatorial candidate, who is running much closer to Gavin Newsom, the Democrat, than anyone had expected. He gave a very enthusiastic speech here to the faithful tonight, and here is what he had to say.
Join me in this election. This is not about me. It's about the team we will build to turn this state around, make it affordable, make it livable, make it safe, make it truly a state that we can be proud of. Let's together make California the golden state once again. Thank you very much. Thank you.
So he was, in fact, sticking very close to Trump's message also. He is somebody who I think appeals to Trump supporters, and he may have to think again in November if he's running against Gavin Newsom on that. I did speak to the chair of the Republican Party and asked him how it is that here in San Diego, which has a predominantly Democratic registered voters base, there are so many Republicans in key positions like the sheriff, the district attorney. And he said he thought it was because the Democrats are not running good enough candidates here in San Diego County, candidates with enough experience to take on the Republicans. The 49th congressional district, none of the candidates are here tonight, even although the leader is a Republican, Diane Harkey. She is an Orange County resident, and she is leading with 25% of the vote, which was not unexpected. She was endorsed by the Republican parties of both Orange and San Diego counties. What's interesting about the 49th congressional race to replace Darrell Issa is that the next three people in these early returns are all Democrats, which does suggest that there will be one Republican and one Democrat in the November election, in spite of the fear that the Democrats might get shut out. What isn't clear is which of the Democrats will be running against Diane Harkey. Mike Levin is currently leading, with Sarah Jacobs running close behind, and Doug Applegate, who of course newly defeated Issa in 2016, they're all running neck and neck really in second place. Interestingly, Kristen Gaspar and Rocky Chavez are falling behind, and so is Paul Kerr, the Democrat who spent $4 million on his campaign. I should just mention that it's quite interesting, the 76th Assembly District, which Rocky Chavez left in order to run for this congressional seat. It's also a North County seat, and in the early returns, two Democrats are coming out very strongly at the top of the pack. Phil Gramm, who the Republicans had endorsed, is running third here in San Diego, so it'll be interesting to see whether the Republicans lose the 76th Assembly District. They could possibly lose it even in this election if two Democrats become the top two running in November. We'll have to wait and see how that turns out. Back to you, Ebony.
Very interesting. Thank you so much, Allison. Let's check in now with KPBS reporter Amitha Sharma at Golden Hall for more. Amitha.
Thank you, Ebony. I am here with La Prensa San Diego publisher Art Castaneras, as well as columnist and podcast host Ruben Navarrete. Art, let's go back to the governor's race. President Trump jumped into the race last week when he endorsed businessman and Republican John Cox. In a state like California, which is a Democratic state, a left-leaning state, does that help him or hurt John Cox?
It does help him in this situation because he needed Republican votes to make it into second place, and he did. And I think he's going to walk away with this in second place. The gap now between second and third is 330,000 votes and widening. I think it's over there. But what's interesting about why it's important to the Republicans, he has no shot of winning this race in the November election. But what it does is it raises expectations for Republicans and hopes it pulls out Republican voters, which affects House races up and down the state, which could then impact whether Republicans or Democrats take over Congress.
And in terms of Villaraigosa, Art just says it looks like it might be over now. Judging by these numbers, what do they say about Latino turnout?
Right. Well, the big surprise here was that Antonio Villaraigosa did not do well enough with Latinos, that Gavin Newsom really beat him over the head with the Latino vote. That was a big surprise. Also, the fact that Gavin Newsom did so much better in Los Angeles on Antonio's home turf than we expected him to do. And so here's, I think, the issue. Antonio Villaraigosa found it very difficult to be all things to all people. He spent so much time in the Central Valley. That was his big gamble. He was living in Fresno practically. He was out there. It's very difficult to do that and take care of things at home. In Los Angeles, they felt neglected and ignored. And likewise with Latinos, he did not run a Latino campaign. He was a mainstream candidate. And so it's very hard to be all things to all people. And Antonio Villaraigosa found that out.
I want to transition to the 49th Congressional District. It looks like Diane Harkey is leading, and it also appears that Republicans have coalesced around Harkey. You had a conversation with her earlier today. What did she say?
Very quickly, we had a fight over at Kogo. I was on radio, and we were sitting next to each other, and I said, what I find really disheartening as someone who lives in the 49th Congressional District is there was no attempt to differentiate yourselves, one Republican from another. It was similar to what happened with Democrats in the governor's race. You couldn't tell the differences. And I said, you all sort of railed against sanctuary state when you couldn't define it. You don't know what the hell you're talking about. And she took exception to that, clearly. She didn't know what she was talking about. But here's the interesting thing. If you're running for Congress, why are we having a debate over a state law in California? You're not going to be able to change that state law. This was clearly a red meat issue for Republicans in every race across the board, whether you're running for dog catcher or Congress. Sanctuary state became the rallying cry to get Republicans to the vote, and it did. It worked.
And we're probably going to see this play out into the race.
They'll be continuing this drumbeat till November.
Okay. Ruben Navarrete, Art Castaneras will be back within minutes. Going back to you, Ebony.
Thank you so much, Amitha. Now we're going to send it off to Eric Anderson, who is he's actually at the Election Central inside Golden Hall. Eric.
Thank you, Ebony. We are here at Golden Hall, and one of the great traditions of being at Golden Hall is holding up the signs. And you can see behind me now that we have sign holders for Nathan Fletcher's campaign. Nathan Fletcher running for the 4th District Supervisor's race. And he has great supporters. Nathan, thanks very much for joining us.
Yeah, it's a great night.
Looks like you're going to be in the top 2. Looks like you're going to be around for another campaign that'll take you to November.
Well, and tonight, I mean, it's so encouraging. You know, the voters of San Diego sent a clear and compelling message that this Board of Supervisors, all 5 Republican, that have been spending our tax dollars advancing Donald Trump's agenda, are ready for change. And they're ready for a supervisor in the 4th District who's going to fight for our values, who's going to protect our immigrants, who's going to protect our refugees, who's going to protect our environment, and who's going to invest in the neighborhoods. And so we're incredibly encouraged by the results. It's just truly a great night.
Are you pleased by the fact that there's so many more votes cast for Democrats, not just you, but other Democrats too?
Well, if you look at the initial totals, over 70% of this district said they're ready to elect a Democrat to drive our county in a new direction, and that's what I think is so desperately needed. You know, you have an incumbent Board of Supervisors and a status quo that has voted themselves major pay raises while not taking care of their workers, that offer the Chargers $150 million for a stadium while not tackling the housing crisis, that is not committed to clean air and clean water. And I think that tonight's message from the voters is overwhelming and is clear that they're ready for change, and there will be a stark contrast and a stark choice in November.
You're likely facing a very experienced politician with a long track record here in San Diego County, Bonnie Dumanis. Sure. How do you approach that battle coming in November?
Well, there's a clear choice. You have an all-5 Republican Board of Supervisors, and if you want to continue that same approach with the status quo, doing the same things in the same way with the same people, then you have that option. But if you're ready for a Democrat who's going to drive us in a new direction, who's going to fight the Trump agenda, who's going to fight for immigrants, who's going to fight for refugees, who's going to fight to protect our environment, who's going to make sure we invest in our neighborhoods, that we invest in mental health services and we tackle the homeless, then you have that option as well. And I believe the voters of this district are ready for change. They're ready for a new energy and a new drive and a new leadership. And so I'm excited about this general election, and we're ready to get started.
Nathan Fletcher, Democrat, running for supervisor in District 4. Ebony, back to you in the studio.
Thank you, Eric. Let's turn now to KPBS reporter Taryn Minto standing by inside the KPBS newsroom. Taryn.
Thanks, Ebony. So voter turnout during a primary election is often lower than a general election in November. This is also not a presidential primary election, which means turnout could be even worse. But San Diego County Registrar of Voters Michael Vu says the percent of people who filed a ballot could actually be higher than expected.
27 gubernatorial candidates on the ballot, when you have 32 U.S. Senate candidates that are on the ballot, when you have 16 candidates in the 49th Congressional District, it's a lot of candidates that are on the ballot for a gubernatorial primary election. And I think that's why it's driving some of the interest for this upcoming election, or this election. What I would say, though, is, again, gubernatorial primary elections is generally the lower turnout elections of all the 4 statewide elections that we conduct in a 4-year cycle. But you know what? This one should be one of those higher turnouts for a gubernatorial primary.
We'll continue to track how the many candidates are doing online at kpbs.org. Ebony, back to you.
Thanks, Taryn. We'll check in now with KPBS reporter Jade Hyman at the Democratic headquarters. Jade?
Hey there, Ebony. Yeah, well, piggybacking off of what Taryn was talking about with voter turnout, a lot of folks here at the San Diego County Democratic Watch Party are hopeful that voter turnout will mean some of these seats will be flipped. Right now, there are no upsets, though, but let's take a pan of the room so you can get an idea of the energy in here tonight. Right now, we've got a lot of voters, a lot of supporters, a few candidates in here, but one of the races that they're really watching is the 50th district. Right now, Duncan Hunter coming in around 48%. Beyond that, Amar Campanajjar, he's down there at 15%. Butner's at 13%. Wells is at 13%. Those numbers, though, nestled so closely together that it's still really anybody's race in terms of who will challenge Butner or who will challenge actually Duncan Hunter come November. So they're obviously watching closely here tonight. Of course, we'll keep you updated as these numbers come in. Live tonight, Jade Hyman, KPBS News.
Thank you, Jade. More election results now in the race for the San Diego County Sheriff. Sheriff Bill Gore is the incumbent. He is running against Dave Myers, a commander with the San Diego County Sheriff's Department. And Sheriff Bill Gore is in the lead with 57% of the votes so far. Commander Dave Myers with 43% of the votes so far. Now on to the race for San Diego County District Attorney. Current interim District Attorney Summer Stephan is running against Deputy Public Defender Genevieve Jones-Wright. Summer Stephan with 65% of the votes so far. Genevieve Jones-Wright with 35%. If you are just joining us on KPBS Radio or TV, this is live coverage of the 2018 primary election. Let's take another look at the results. In the race for governor, you can see Lieutenant Governor Gavin Newsom in the lead with 34% of the votes, and businessman from Rancho Santa Fe, Republican John Cox, with 26% of the votes so far. Another look at the 49th Congressional District contest. This is the race to replace Congressman Darrell Issa. You can see Republican Diane Harkey with 25% of the votes about, and Mike Levin, an environmental attorney, a Democrat from Orange County, with 17% of the vote, followed by Sarah Jacobs with 15% of the votes. One more look at the congressional race for the 50th district. Congressman Duncan Hunter Jr. is the incumbent, and he's in the lead with 47% of the vote, nearly 48% of the vote. Let's check in with KPBS reporter Amitha Sharma at Golden Hall for more. Amitha.
Ebony, thank you. I'm here with La Prensa San Diego publisher Art Castaneras, as well as columnist and podcast host Ruben Navarrete. Let's turn our attention back to the governor's race. Lieutenant Governor Gavin Newsom, a Democrat, has consistently been a front runner in this race. What makes him such an appealing candidate?
Well, first of all, he spent the last 7.5 years as the lieutenant governor. And the lieutenant governor does nothing except wait for the governor either to die or to term out. So he's been running for this for a long time. Before that, he spent 7 years as the mayor of San Francisco. He's very likable. He's progressive. He's good looking. He's rich. He's a very appealing candidate. He's been the front runner from day one. Everybody else was trying to catch up, and everybody was just trying to get into second place to meet him in a general election. The turnout in the general election is so different for Latinos, for Democrats, for women, that Antonio Villaraigosa would have had a much better shot in a general election.
And Ruben, John Cox,
right,
a Republican, it looks like he's going to be the Republican challenger,
right,
for Gavin Newsom for the race for governor. He is against California sanctuary cities law. How big of an issue do you expect this to be in the general campaign?
John Cox says he's against that. The fact is John Cox doesn't really know where he stands on immigration, because he contacted me at the beginning of this race about a year ago before he declared. We had a couple of meals together, and he tried to sell himself to me as a moderate on immigration. He said he was a Jack Kemp Republican. You know, I love Jack Kemp. That was always going to play well with me. But when he opened his mouth and put things on the air, it became clear he was running to the far right on this issue. Now, guess what's going to happen tomorrow? As of tomorrow, John Cox is going to run to the middle. He's going to run to the middle because he knows, he's a smart guy. He knows how to count. He'll get crushed by Gavin Newsom unless he runs to the middle now. So John Cox will be whoever you want him to be on immigration. He's a phony. You can't believe him.
Art?
I think the hard thing for him, though, is going to be he's already been endorsed by Trump. Trump's going to want to take credit for a victory if he wins. And the more he gets connected to Trump, the worse he does in a general election.
We're going to wrap it up there, gentlemen. I want to thank you so much for being part of our analysis panel. Art Castaneras, La Prensa publisher, La Prensa San Diego publisher, as well as Ruben Navarrete, podcast host, as well as columnist. Ebony, turning it over to you.
Thank you, Amitha. You can find complete coverage online at kpbs.org. We'll have more on the primary results tomorrow morning on Morning Edition on KPBS Radio. Thank you for joining us. Have a great evening.
Thank you.